What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the Coach Grossman Dynasty here on NCAA 14, featuring that college football revamp, of course. We're out here, man, gearing up for an off season, and it just might be an off season to remember with all of the looming conference realignment that's going to happen in real life. We are getting close to that point in real time, so it's gonna be a fun episode, man. You're gonna want to tune in for the whole thing. Smash that like button, hit subscribe if you have to be brand new to the channel as well. And with that being said, let's take a look at how this season has went for us, starting with the good old-fashioned looking at the schedule real quick. This is what our schedule was. Started off really strong, an 11-game winning streak, blew out San Jose State, blew out UAB, blew out teams like Tulane, Missouri, Tulsa. We blew those guys out too. We really only kind of struggled down the stretch. This SMU game was supposed to be lost, but then the game froze, and then we actually had to go about rebooting the game. Barely beat Temple, lost to Cincinnati, and then found a way to beat Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. So we finished the year 12-1. That being said, we did have a pretty weak schedule. 59-84 was the record of our schedule this season. Notre Dame definitely was our toughest opponent, but we did find a way to win. So we proved that we deserved to really be competitive. And listen, for our first year as a head coach, it was a really successful year. But from here on out, how do we maintain that success and how do we build upon it? I want to go to a national championship game, but it's really dependent on some guys staying, making sure that they don't declare for the draft. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. Now, this was also a year in which we saw several records being broken. For example, we saw Brian Batty break the record for most rushing yards in a career, breaking Quinton Flowers' record as well. He was a great quarterback for Southern Florida. And speaking of really good quarterbacks, Timmy Mclean up there as well. Single season record for most passing yards, close to 3,500 yards. He would have had so much more if he didn't get hurt in the bowl game. Also had the school record for most passing touchdowns in a season. Broke that record by a country mile. Ended up with 39 touchdowns. Jimmy Horn Jr., most receiving touchdowns in a year. Ended up with 12 total. And it was just a great year to go about breaking some records for our football program. And speaking of records and stats, let's take a look at the rest of the stats for our guys. And listen, Timmy Mclean was really good. 39 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. He is draft eligible. Now, it's going to be really interesting to see if he declares for the NFL draft or not. But if he does, we're going to be in some serious trouble. The only other quarterback that played this season was Cartavius Marsh. He was a senior, but I don't know. He had a really tough one. 30 for 53, 462, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions as well to go with that. So it was definitely really rough to see him go about stepping in outside of mop-up duty. Rushing, we also saw Brian Batty. Not as many yards as he did last year. Actually, it was about half, but we didn't run as much with Brian Batty as we did previously. Still had a really good year. 200 carries, 1,130 yards, 11 touchdowns. He did have more rushes of 20 yards or more than he did in his junior campaign. But Ben Archie was pretty good too. He only had 100 carries on the year. He ended up with 622 yards. He's going to be the new starting running back come next season. Timmy Mclean was good on the ground, 441 yards and 7 touchdowns. Then we saw Holden Willis get into the end zone. He had 11 for 118. Coming on the first game of the season against Indiana off a jet sweep, that was his only rushing touchdown. And then Gunnar Greenwald found the end zone as well. He's our third string running back for this year. 6 for 25. Found the end zone when Brian Batty was hurt. Now, as for receivers, we did not have any 1,000-yard seasons, but we had a good trio of wide receivers and just weapons in general. Gunnar Greenwald, for example, led the team in receiving yards, 850 yards, 9 tubs, 54 catches as well. Yusef Terry actually tied the previous school record as well. He was 816, 10 touchdowns, 58 catches. Jimmy Horn Jr. had 50 catches, has the school record for receiving touchdowns, and then also tacked on 815 yards. Then we saw Holden Willis looking good, 41 for 520, 2 touchdowns. Sincere Brown made some good plays, 32, 456, 4 touchdowns as well. All of which, unfortunately, are seniors, so we are going to be a little challenged passing the football. Brian Batty, 300 yards, 5 touchdowns. And then Ben Archie was the only receiver, or at least like pass catcher, that was not a senior. 3 for 41, 1 touchdown over this season, but losing a lot of weapons this offseason is going to be a serious challenge. Now, blocking, I don't really talk about blocking all that much, but I gotta shout out Matt Keys real quick. He ended up with 10 pancakes on the year, no sacks allowed either, so really good season for him. The sophomore from Kings Point, Florida. He certainly did his thing, man. I love what he did overall over the course of this season. And I don't think we really had anyone except Chris Thomas got more pancakes than sacks. But in the defense of Chris Thomas, we scrambled to the right quite a bit, even though we did start a left-handed quarterback. Finally, for the defense, this defense did really good this season. I am so glad, and the defense, I think, is going to be a calling card moving forward. Grady Nugent led the team in tackles. Keep in mind, he is a true sophomore, so he's not even draft eligible yet. He ends up with 90 tackles this season. Todd Walden, also a sophomore, 67 tackles. Christopher Townsell, he is graduating, probably will not make it to the NFL, but 66 tackles, that is something to really hang your hat on for sure. We also had a really good pass rush over the course of this season. Marvin Jackson had 14 sacks. And he's only a sophomore, guys. He's only going to get better. He was absolutely insane. Talk about a breakout year as well. Jamari Stewart looked good too. 9 sacks in this one. Followed by Todd Walden with 6. But beyond those 3 guys, didn't really have anyone get to the quarterback with any consistency. Thankfully, we will have all 3 of those main guys back. Finally, AJ Hamilton led the team in interceptions. He had 3 picks. But to be honest with you, those were all in the same game. Yeah, he had 3 interceptions in 1 game, won the Jim Forpay Award. He never really got burnt this year. Definitely played better than that 83 overall that is shown. We also had guys like Jalen Stokes, Kevin Lott, Grady Nugent, and Jamari Stewart get multiple interceptions over the course of this season. Again, all guys that we're going to get back. Will Jones is going to be graduating, so really getting a lot of our playmakers on the defensive side of the football back next year. We also had a bunch of forced fumbles from a bunch of different guys, but let's talk about Chris Townsell for a second. He was the only person on the team that had multiple fumble recoveries this year. We had a real good nose for the football. We forced a ton of turnovers, and yeah, man, the defense, really put us in a spot to go about getting some blowouts. But let's go ahead and take a look and see how your custom prospects are doing around the country real quick. Starting with Jonathan Fousen, who did see a little bit more playing time this year. Improved his stats across the board, and it was 6 tackles, 3 TFLs, 7 assisted tackles as well, and even contributed for half a sack and had a fumble recovery as well. So showing some improvement across the board. Jonathan Fousen is somebody that should be the starter coming next season with the graduation of Bryce Johnson Meth. Over in Cincinnati, we do also have Andre Scheigel, who saw the field a little bit, about the same amount this year. And, it was a rough going once again. 27 for 60, 362 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 4 picks. Now, he did improve his completion percentage, but is still not above 50%, which I'm really surprised about because he does have 93 throw accuracy. So he does have really good throw accuracy. He's not the most mobile, but he is in a position to compete for the starting job for Cincinnati. It's going to be between him and Nick Williams. in spring ball. So we'll see how that turns out. Now, what was really surprising this year is we saw Fatu Tolufe end up going ahead and getting some run in his true freshman campaign. He ended up with 5 total tackles, 2 TFLs, 11 assisted tackles, and a QB sack to go with it as well. Also had a pass deflection, so when he was on the field, he ended up doing some things for Hawaii. So that's really interesting to see. We'll see if he can build on it, even though he is still kind of buried on the depth chart. Malachi Hill, the son of Chris Hill, for those of you that enjoyed the St. Thomas Dynasty, saw the field for the first time. He ended up with 8 tackles, 11 assisted tackles as well, 2 pass deflections, and 2 forced fumbles as well. Plus, he got a block on special teams, so making his presence felt. Dude is going to be an elite playmaker next year. He is, he's making his rounds, man. He could very well be a starting corner for Iowa State next year, or make a really big impact on special teams. Chris Hill also saw an improvement in stats. He ended up with 6 tackles, 8 TFLs, a sack and a half to his name as well, and saw a pass deflection. That is also an improvement from the previous season. He should be starting next year. Isaiah King of Louisiana Tech had a really big season, getting his first 1,000-yard year, 66 catches, 1,040 yards, 8 touchdowns to go with it as well. And he only dropped 5 passes, so the drop passes weren't that bad, and he made an impact, helped his team win in the Birmingham Bowl against UCF. A pleasant surprise for this year was Bear Footlock, who got a ton of playing time after Ramon Thomas ended up getting hurt. 235 carries, 1,140 yards, 10 touchdowns to go with it as well. He did have 3 rushing fumbles, so he's got to work on that a little bit, but he was a really good job as a runner and was decent as a catcher as well. 38 catches, 347 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well. He should also be the starter coming next season for NC State. Now, even though Kevin Sparks did not have that good of a performance in the bowl game, he still had a decent year. 19 catches, 120 yards, 1 touchdown to go with it as well. Also only dropped one pass all year, so he showed pretty solid hands. Definitely is a all-around player. Doesn't really excel at one thing, but he is somebody that can excel into a good receiving tight end. But for now in the bowl game, he was a solid blocker, and that really showed, helping Old Dominion get into the end zone for a couple of touchdowns. Meanwhile, down at UCF, who is the champions of the American Conference, we got Joseph Krakowski, who is in his freshman year campaign representing the IMG Academy. But as a fullback, he was not used very often. Matter of fact, he only had 1 carry the entire season. It did go for 6 yards, so it was a good rush, but he did not get a chance to catch the football, and he doesn't record anything with blocking stats. So, backup fullback, not a lot of room for success. We'll see what happens to Joseph Krakowski. We'll see if they move him to linebacker eventually. That being said, there is 2 more custom prospects that I want to go over before we move on to the next portion of the offseason. We got Jon Johnson, who was up to an 88 overall, but had a regression this year. He did get a little bit banged up, but across the board, not as effective. 120 carries, 620 yards, 8 touchdowns as well. Didn't have as many rushing fumbles, but just wasn't as effective of a runner this year. Plus, he barely caught the ball at all. 3 for 28, 1 touchdown. No drop passes at least, but wasn't as effective in his junior year. We'll see if he bounces back. And the last player that I want to go ahead and talk about is Gladier Aruba. Now, Gladier Aruba, he's up to an 85 to this point. He had his best season, but, Wisconsin is not a pass-heavy team, to say the least, so that affects his stats. 26 catches, 375 yards, and 4 touchdowns, but, not somebody that is being used very often. It's just tough, really, to get any run. He did have one carry for 3 yards, but yeah, a little bit of a disappointment for Gladier Aruba, considering he did come in as a 4-star prospect, I believe. So the fact that he hasn't put up that many numbers in 3 years, it's a little bit concerning, but he is going to move up to at least the number 2 spot at wide receiver next year. We'll see what he can do in his senior campaign. So we move on to the coaching changes, and it does look like that we have some new coordinators to work with this upcoming season. We got Jim Knowles, who is most known for being the defensive coordinator, was for Oklahoma State. He's now with Ohio State in real life. He's going to be our new defensive coordinator. And then we have Brent Brennan as our new offensive coordinator this upcoming season. So that being said, that does end up meaning that we will have some new playbooks on not only the offensive side of football, but also on the defensive side of the ball as well. So that does mean that we got some new playbooks to work with, and that's going to be an interesting challenge to work with. So we'll see how Tim Mclean, Ben Archie, and the other guys on offense, as well as our defensive guys, adjust to those kind of changes to the playbook. So we get to the players leaving, and it's one of the saddest parts of the offseason. And look at this. Andrew Stokes is going to go to the pro draft. He is a projected 4th round pick, which, if you ask me, that is a really good look for a punter to be, that close to being a day 2 pick. But look at this, our quarterback, Tim Mclean, he is going to stick around. So we know that Timmy Mclean is going to be our starting quarterback next year, but we now have an interesting competition for who's going to be the backup quarterback behind Timmy Mclean. That is going to be a really important question for us as we move into this offseason. So we knew that Andrew Stokes was going to be a 4th round pick for us, but how about this for transfer requests? We got 2 players from Pittsburgh that want to come around. We got Mario Branch, who saw on the field a little bit, 8 carries, 26 yards. Could be a future starter for us down the line. And then Frank Pendleton as well. He's also a true freshman. He got redshirted, so he'll come in as a freshman redshirt. And then Mario Branch is going to come in as a true sophomore. Both of them will have to sit out a year because they could not get an NCAA waiver. So they will have to sit out a year before they can play with us. But I like how both of these players are, and we are of course going to go ahead and accept both of their transfers. So even with those 2 transfers, we still have 13 scholarships to play with, and honestly, I'm not going to sign 13 guys, but there is 2 guys that I'm really focusing in on that I want to bring into this program. Mostly, I want to bring in Willy Gillett. He's a 4-star middle linebacker, but he is a gem. 85 speed as a linebacker. That is insanely quick. Once he gets the rest of those skills to catch up, got to work on the coverage just a little bit, but he can see the field in his true freshman year. There's only Minnesota offering a scholarship, but I really want to bring this guy in. He would be fantastic for our defense. And speaking of our defense, we got our custom recruit, man, Ivan Bonewis. He is still somebody that, is still looking for a team to play with. And listen, we're in a recruiting battle right now between us and Florida Atlantic, which I do believe is going to join the Americans. So they're going to become conference opponents of ours starting next season. So I really want to bring Ivan Bonewis, because the last thing that I want to do is face this guy for the next 4 to 5 years, right? Like, I'm really not trying to do that. So putting some points on him too. Some of these other guys I would love to bring in, but I just don't have the points for it, straight up and down, and I don't like to put everything into recruiting. That's a little bit cheesy for me, and that's just not realistic. So anyways, that's who I'm gonna do. If some of these other guys want to come to USF, that would be really awesome, but we'll see what ends up happening in terms of signing day. Alright, so we end up signing Willy Gillett, which was someone that I really want, and we even got a few other guys. Jason Duncan's pretty solid. Same thing with Tyler Ray. Brandon Cooper at least will provide some depth. But how about this for a little bit of a surprise? Ivan Bonewis signs with Florida State. Now, they were not in a recruiting battle with us. It was just us and Florida Atlantic, so we got to check that out to see what happened there. So, wow, it seems like Florida State put all of their points in Ivan Bonemus, because they blew all of us out of the water. I have no idea how this would happen. That is insane to me. I can't believe we did not bring this guy in. That's crazy. But, I mean, we got some good players. Tyler Ray's solid. He's a 4-star. Brandon Cooper will be some depth. Jason Duncan, feel really good about bringing him in. Willy Gillett, he's going to be the star of this class for sure. Jason Robinson, we lost some, but it's a solid class. I like what we brought in overall, even though, we didn't fill out our, didn't use all of our scholarships, but we didn't necessarily have to either. We at least took care of our needs, and I think that's what's the most important. Now, we do also finish about the middle of the pack. We were 65th in recruiting this year, which, I mean, to be honest with you guys, I think we need to be a little bit better. We are in the heart of Florida, which is a recruiting hotbed. That is a pipeline for us. That is our home state. And not to mention, we finished 12-1, so we could have done better with recruiting, but at this point, it is what it is, though. So, I mean, we just got to take the good with the bad and, got to get ready for next season with the guys that are coming to the University of Southern Florida. But let's go ahead and check out some of the remaining players that are on the, your custom prospects that haven't signed to this point. We go ahead and see Daniel Parcell. Now, he was at Garden City Community College. He did not officially commit anywhere, but he is going to be a preferred walk-on for the University of Notre Dame. So I'm going to manually add this guy in, going to make some edits to the roster. So Daniel Parcell will be with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We also didn't really see Julius Fousen sign anywhere. Now, that was really interesting. He is not going to receive any scholarships either, but he is going to walk on at Boston College, though. So, Boston College walk on. We'll see how his career turns out, but definitely going to have a chip on his shoulder moving forward into his college career. Finally, we do see Danny Daniel get himself a home kicking in college football. It's going to be in Colorado. He is going to be leaving out of state for that. Didn't have a scholarship offer anywhere else, so someone else, a guy that's also going to have a little chip on his shoulder. We'll see how his college career turns out at Colorado. So we go ahead and get ourselves into the position changes portion of the offseason, and we do have one thing that we need to change. We gotta move Harrison Reddick somewhere, and I'm wondering where he would fit well at. As of right now, we do see him in, potentially as a offensive lineman. I think that's where I'm going to put him. I am going to go ahead and put him at center for this upcoming season. Another couple of changes that I'm going to make to the offensive line is I'm going to make an adjustment for Lendell Dawson. He's a senior. He's not going to play at right guard, so I'm going to shift him over to that left guard position. Make sure we got somebody free deep there. He can at least compete for the backup spot there behind DJ Ray. And then for right tackle, Frank Pendleton, he's actually somebody that is probably going to be the future heir apparent, maybe. We'll see what happens with Chris Thomas. But Matt Keys, I'm going to go ahead and move Matt Keys over to left tackle. There's already somebody as a junior that's starting ahead of him. So just to give him a little bit better of a chance. And he might very well start. It's going to be a position battle between him and Kevin Gordon. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, I think that's all the position changes that I want to go ahead and make now. We'll go ahead and move to the training results and see how the rest of the roster is going to look. So we get to training results, and Timmy Mclean is going to be a 99 overall. Ooh, boy, am I super pumped about that. Dude's going to have 92 throw power, 91 accuracy. Even's got 81 speed and 90 agility. 98 stamina too. Injury rating is really good. As long as Timmy Mclean is our quarterback, I feel really good about what we're about to do. We also got a couple of NFL prospects. Jalen Stokes at corner, and then also have Jordan Smith at the free safety position. Jason Anderson and Jamari Stewart are pretty borderline. I would say the same for Markeith Kelly as well. So got a good group of guys overall, I would think. Real big question is, who's going to be the backup? And it looks like Mitch Steele might win the backup job. He is probably going to be someone that would step in as an emergency quarterback slash mop-up duty, but if Timmy Mclean is out for a long period of time, we might have to divert over to a 2-quarterback system. At halfback, no surprises here, but Ben Archie will be the starter, but Mario Branch, who is a transfer from Pittsburgh, he will be waiting in the wings for right now, and he'll probably be the heir apparent after Ben Archie is done. Wide receiver, we're going to be really youthful at wide receiver. Don't have a lot of talent here. The only solid receiver that we have is Spencer Tate, and Spencer Tate barely got the ball last year. 4 catches for 55 yards. Might be something that we might have to lean on that running game a little bit more this season, because we have a lot of youth behind them, a lot of untested talent as well. Tight end, we'll have Scott Morris. He's going to be the starting tight end, although Patrick Starks not too far behind, 71 overall, trying to make a run on it, but he'll be the backup. Here's our offensive line, and it'll be a decent offensive line. We're still a little weak at the tackles, but you know, our interior offensive line, we should be good there. Defensively, Marvin Jackson, he's up to an 83. He's coming back as an award winner. Could get to a point where he possibly could very well be someone that can be really good. Jamari Stewart, already talked about him. Defensive tackle, we got 2 solid DTs, Joe McCormick and Ryan Bennett. He can plug some holes up. Pause down for our defensive line. Left outside linebacker, got Todd Walton. He's good. Grady Nugent, he'll be coming back as our starting middle linebacker. And then right outside linebacker, got Brandon Adams. He's going to be an 80 overall, so a good linebacking core. And then to round it out, Jalen Stokes is good. Kevin Lott, he played really solid his junior year. He's going to be an 83. I like what I'm seeing. Jordan Smith's really good. And then Eric Houston's going to be the new starting strong safety. And 84 overall, I will gladly take that. We might see a little bit of a dip in our special teams. Will not have as many touchbacks, which could have an effect later down the road. Now, one thing that we do need to do moving forward is we got to cut some guys from our roster. We have 8 cuts that we need to make, and I'm looking at this roster right now. I think the first cut, honestly, that I want to make is Scott McBride. I'm not impressed with him. He had a couple of tackles last year, but I don't think he's going to be someone that's ever going to get a ton of playing time. So Scott McBride, I'm actually going to remove first, and then I am going to do the same thing with Dustin Mack. I mean, dude, he's not good. Probably someone that we signed really late. So I'm going to go ahead and remove Dustin Mack as well. So that leaves me with 6 cuts, and I think what I want to do, get rid of Nathan White. He's only a 53. I don't see someone that's ever going to play that much. Mike Kendrick, we already got Mitch Steele, so I'm not really worried about that. Brandon Cooper, it's tough. It really is some tough decision making. I really am. I feel for him, but yeah, I want to cut Cooper. I want to cut Terrence McCoy, and then I want to move Mark Matthews off the roster as well. So we got one more cut that we need to make still. I think I want to go with Michael Richardson, because I'm looking at halfback, right? And we just got a transfer. There's plenty of sophomores on this roster, and I just never see him playing. So Michael Richardson will be the final cut for us. So that's going to be our roster for this upcoming season. Mitch Steele, custom prospect, going to be our backup quarterback this upcoming season, with Ryan Wood as the 3rd string guy. Hopefully we don't have to see Timmy Mclean get hurt. The depth behind him is not good. But I like our roster. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into some of the changes in conference realignment, because oh boy, 2025 would be where we would be with season number 5, and man, is there going to be absolute chaos. So let's go ahead and get into it, man. Show you what's going to be coming down. So remember when I told you guys that this was going to be a really chaotic off season? I legitimately was not joking, because we are starting to get around a time where in real life, we would see some of the conference realignments that were announced earlier in the college football season. So, I mean, the biggest news really is seeing two new teams in the SEC. Oklahoma and Texas are both joining the SEC. So we have our first super conference of 16 teams in here. It's a massive conference, to say the least, and it's a lot to handle for sure. It's going to be really interesting to see how the SEC shakes out and how Oklahoma and Texas are, because 9 of them are coming in, finishing in the top 25 in the AP polls. So, they got a lot to prove in the SEC. The Big 12 also saw some teams added, as we did end up seeing 4 teams added. So the Big 12 is now back up to 12 teams again. In the North, you got BYU and the Cincinnati Bearcats, who does have Andre Scheigel. He's a senior competing for the starting quarterback job. And then in the South, we have the Houston Cougars from the American Conference, as well as the UCF Knights. They won the American Conference last year. They got upset in the Birmingham Bowl by Louisiana Tech. And they got Joseph Krakowski, another custom recruit for you guys, playing at that fullback position. So the Big 12 is now back up to 12 teams as well. But while we did not get the invitation to come up to the Big 12, we got some more competition in terms of number of teams. We got a bunch of new teams from the Conference USA. So we now have Charlotte joining, Florida Atlantic joining our conference. UAB is coming up to the American as well. Then we got North Texas, UTSA as well. So we got a bigger conference, and that means we will have a conference championship game, which I was hoping that we would have had so that we could have the opportunity to play UCF last year. That did not happen because NCAA 14 still doesn't allow that. Hopefully College Football Revamped guys can do something about it. If not, that's okay. It is asking a lot. I love how this mod is turning out as it is. But we got 14 teams now in the American Conference. So the biggest losers of conference realignment, though, is Conference USA, because they have to go about, they're adding, in real life, they would add teams from the FCS. I believe New Mexico State is coming in the Conference USA. But since they're not in the mod, and you also can't call teams up without replacing a current FBS squad, Conference USA is down to 5 teams. Now, they did add Army to get up to 6. So what will probably happen is over the next couple of seasons, schools that, maybe are a 1-star aren't competing at these Power 5 conferences, they may get moved down to Conference USA in order to fill this out a little bit. But they are huge losers, as they only have 6 FBS programs in their conference now. So this now takes us into the schedule that we have going on for season number 5, and we got a doozy for you guys. Week 1, we're going to get right into it, man. We are taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Not only is there a couple of custom prospects that are on this team that play at wide receiver, but they come in as a preseason number 11 team. So that's going to be a huge week 1 game for us. That's actually, you know what? I want to go ahead and make this like a neutral site game. Let's go ahead. I want to do that. Let's go. Where do we want to go for this one? I think I'm going to go to the Chick-fil-A kickoff at Mercedes-Benz. We'll make that a neutral site game to get week number 1 going. And then we'll have we'll have home games against Michigan State as well as Louisiana Monroe to round up our non-conference schedule. We will have a bye week. But then we get into the meat of conference play. Now we'll take on Rice, who in North Texas as well. Actually, first 4 teams that we're playing up against, they're new teams from the Conference USA. They are newcomers, so we're going to enjoy their presence. Same thing with Charlotte, matter of fact. They're also coming in from Conference USA. And then we'll play 4 more teams that were in the American Conference last year: East Carolina, Memphis, Temple, and then we'll round things up with a huge matchup. We're playing against UCF, so we'll get the war on I-4. So really excited about the schedule. We are going to be we're going to be challenged, man. Even though we have some new faces in the conference, we got a few preseason top 25 opponents, and I'm all here for it. So then we get into the red shirts that I want to go into. I don't want to do anything on quarterback. We only have 3 guys. I want to have more than just Mitch Steele and Ryan Wood. It's definitely possible if Timmy Mclean gets hurt that we see all 3 quarterbacks at some point of the season, since they are so similar. And Ryan Wood is a little bit more versatile, so even though he may not be as good of a passer as Mitch Steele, I do want to get him in some packages if that comes down that way. Halfback, we will be redshirting Mario Branch. He's a transfer from Pitt, so he wouldn't be playing this season anyways. Didn't get that NCAA waiver, so that hurts a little bit. And then at middle linebacker, since we are going to be making a couple of changes to our defensive playbook, we're now going to be in a 4-2-5. We also we'll redshirt a couple of our linebackers. Willy Gillett is the most notable. I really love this guy's talent, what he brings to the table, but we still got Grady Nugent. He's a great player for us. And same thing with Ben Jean. We'll go ahead and redshirt both of those guys, let them develop because they have the physical attributes to be successful. But that being said, they need a little bit of seasoning before they see the field. So if you made it to this far in the video, this is the time where I talk to you guys about getting your custom players in this dynasty. So how it works is that your player will start out as a high school senior unless you describe it in the guy's background otherwise. So if you want to go ahead and have a custom player that gets into the recruiting process, gets recruited by these schools, make sure you go ahead. There's going to be a template down in the comment section. It's going to be a pinned comment for you guys, and you're going to fill out that template, and then I'll use that template to create your player. He will have somewhat random attributes. It will be based on, what position he plays in, as well as what kind of body, what is his, height and weight, all that good stuff. So that being said, I hope you enjoyed this off-season recap. If you did, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe as well if you have to be brand new. And let me know down in the comments, man, who you think is the biggest winner of conference realignment, as well as what you think our win and loss prediction is going to be for this upcoming season. But with that, this is Jon Gaming on the mic signing off, but I'm hoping you're all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.